Well, I'm late to the party on this as usual, but also as usual, I have some unique things to say. This helicopter, Taog's MD500C, it's the closest thing to Mr. D's star cycle, so I'm going to speak with a little bit of authority. This model is only available on Flight Sim 2024, which I finally did get after a hefty increase in internet connectivity. On that note, let's get to it. I find the enforced walk-around kind of amusing. Mr. D actually tasked me with the removal of these covers, and I keep them together and stow them properly because if you lose one, he'll kick your ass. They don't just disappear like here, and you have to put them somewhere you know you'll find them later. There's a lot missing from this walk-around. You're looking for cracks, leaks. This gas cap, it's actually supposed to be facing to the left, this tab, so that the wind doesn't catch it, and come off in flight. You check up here for oil, make sure that the fluids are good. You're actually supposed to check up here. There's supposed to be a port here to check the transmission fluid, just like the one on the outside for the engine oil. The transmission's up here. And another thing that's missing is that there should be a fluid indicator here for the tail gearbox, which is right here. I love that we can open the cowling. That's really cool. I do that as well. You do that to pull the engine off after you come down from a flight. All right. So with this engine here, this is like a jet engine that's folded in on itself like a pocket knife. The intake comes in from the top of the scoop up here. It comes in, the compressor is somewhere in this region, and the air comes in through these two pipes, the compressed air, and it comes out into this bowl shape. And you'll see that on both sides. There's two pipes where the air spills out into. And this would be the part of the compressor where the air is coming out from. And it comes into this bowl shape. This red hose inserts fuel into this combustion chamber. This is the igniter. It's the thing that's ticking when you first start up the engine. That sets up a huge flame in here. It's really hot. Blows hot exhaust gas up this direction. And this area would be where the turbine is. And the turbine drives a shaft that goes up into the rotor transmission. And then once the hot exhaust gases come up through the turbine, they exit through these twin ports, one on each side of the engine. So when you're doing the inspection here, the pre-flight walk around, you're supposed to be looking for cracks, cabling that's come loose, oil leaks and that sort of thing. And that's what we do when we take off, before we do. So really love the detail they put into this. Now, if you really want to impress me with realism, throw an oil leak in there every once in a while and let me find it and let me fix it in the clipboard. And if I don't find it and fix it, I get an in-flight flame out and I have to do an auto rotation. How's that for realism? Now let's go inside and see how that looks. Now I prefer model makers to focus on good flight performance and characteristics than animation. Generally, you spend more time flying than looking at the aircraft from the outside. Also, I imagine it's hard to get all these mechanical linkages to look right. Helicopter mechanics are really complicated, so modeling their animation's gotta be nuts. But I gotta admire when they do it right. Now here we have sort of partial animation. I'm wiggling the cyclic around and nothing's happening to the blade in front. But if I lift the collective, you can clearly see it pitch up. Now if we lean out and take a look at the swash plate linkages for what's going on up there, you'll see it's consistent. And someday I'll do a video explaining what all that hardware salad is. But I can tell you that the collective pitch is animated because the whole swash plate will move up and down, tilting the rotors, but the cyclic is not, which would tilt the swash plate itself and the rotors accordingly. So about half of it is done, but what is done looks really good. And then looking at what no one else in the industry calls the tail feathers, I can see that they're also pitch animated. So overall, pretty good job on the external animation. Now let's compare the startup for the sim versus the real thing. Let's watch how the dials track. The two primary ones to look at are the compressor speed, since you manually throttle to idle at about 13%, and then you watch the temp gauge to make sure you don't get pegged to an excessive output temperature for a prolonged period. You'll touch hot for a short blip as the turbine comes up to speed and enough cooling air starts making its way back there. Also watch that the rotor comes up and settles alongside the turbine at about 60% at idle. You can see that in fact the dials track very well. I absolutely love the ignition howl. That's 100% accurate. Listen to the two back to back. But I'm not fond of the running whine though. The real thing is an ear-piercing whine, not a whirring sound. My favorite feature about this entire model is the suspension. I will strongly argue it is the best helicopter suspension in the enthusiast sim world, hands down. The community project DCS-086 was the first model to make an honest attempt at it, but I would say this one is even better. And it is the first one for the Microsoft family of sims. What's the big deal about suspension? Who cares? Watch this video to understand why I care and why you should too. What about flight model and responsiveness? I've complained before that Microsoft seems to have the least realistic flight model of the three major sim platforms. In general, Microsoft comes across as watery, more like you're piloting an airship or a sub than a helicopter. But I will say this model comes across very accurate to me. I haven't pushed the real MD500 around like Mr. D has, so he'd have to weigh in to be sure. But from what I have done, this feels good to me. Every bit the Ferrari that this wild machine is. I love that you get the MD500 growl in high G turns. I still haven't figured out where that comes from, but they captured it in this model. That's awesome, and to me, contributes to the realism. Now, whereas others may like a helicopter model because it's a cool model, or it looks cool, or it can run missions of some sort, or fire missiles, or what have you, I'm a bit of an odd bird in that I key off of fringe conditions. I'm no expert, but it seems to me the fringe conditions of helicopter flight may outnumber the normal ones. In fixed-wing aviation, you have things like stall, icing, wind shear, low-density air, etc. It seems to me like helicopters suffer more adverse phenomenon as part of their normal operations than fixed wing. So while modeling normal helicopter flight is certainly challenging in and of itself, it's incorporating those fringe conditions that stand out to me as hallmarks of diligent development. Auto-rotation, for example, is an off-the-menu condition, and not all models will incorporate it. I'm glad to say that this one does. You know, just in case your engine flames out because of the oil leak you missed in the walk-around you didn't do. When I've flown with Mr. D and we're zipping along with me at the controls, I become hyper-aware of VNE, because it's got to be a bad day in the air when you accidentally exceed the aerodynamic limits the manufacturer sets for their aircraft. I don't ever want to know what really happens in that case, but Taog's handling of the situation is enough to convince you it's nothing good, and you should never try to do that. But aside from the acrobatic aerodynamics, there's real consequences to be had in this model if you have realistic damage enabled on the clipboard. Soon enough, you'll get a chip detection warning. Chips are what you get when one of the transmission gearboxes start grinding and sending pieces of gear through the oil system. There are magnetic detectors that grab those pieces, and enough of them will cause an electrical short that lights up the chip warning. It's telling you you're grinding your gears, and it'll eventually give out. When your gears give out in your helicopter, it's a bad day, so you want to address that soon. Apparently in real life, it's not an immediate danger, but an indication that you should keep an eye on it, and if it happens again within a certain period of time, it's time for a maintenance visit. Here, you get progressive failure, oil temperature, oil pressure, eventual engine failure, and a good opportunity to practice unplanned auto-rotations. It's one thing to practice auto-rotation, it's another to spontaneously pick a good spot to land on and auto-rotate to it successfully. Another condition you'd want to avoid in real life is vortex ring state. That's the situation where a helicopter is descending straight down and reaching the condition where it's created a circulating smoke ring of air that it's descending in. It might sound cool, but it feels like a sudden, unexpected drop, like the floor has been pulled out from under you.
We're on express elevator to hell, going down.
Again, glad to say Taog gives us this, and it's something you can get out of with enough elevation, even in real life. Next, I tried to overtorque and overtemp the engine, but I didn't get a similarly dramatic result. If you look on the turbine outlet temperature, you've got your green zone, your yellow that says you can be there for a short period, and your red zone that you should avoid except for the briefest seconds. The same zones are on the torque dial. I jammed the collective all the way up and flew continuously like that. The temperature never went into the yellow no matter what I did, while the torque went well beyond red and stayed there. I expected flame out, chips, sparks, smoke, fire, bills, FAA warnings, maybe Mr. D's boot. Nothing happened. There are other even more fringe conditions that are very real helicopter flight hazards, but with decreasing testability in flight sim. LTE is loss of tail rotor effectiveness, where in the right wind conditions, like in these 50-knot winds, your helicopter could start spinning out of control, but that didn't happen here. You can get into dynamic rollover where your helicopter skid snags on something, causing you to roll to the point you can't get out of it, but it requires a pretty big lip in flight sim. Even the roughest ground isn't really enough. And finally, there's ground resonance, and it's hard to induce that on command. And even if you could, undoubtedly flight sim wouldn't know what to do with that. But it's a condition every helicopter pilot has to know about and be able to respond to instantly in real life, because it's a 10-second disassembly of your aircraft otherwise. These last three are more limitations of the sim than of the model. The sim has to be able to give you the conditions to model against. I know that personally because creating vibrophiles has the same sort of limitations. The sim has to give you the hooks to be able to key off of when generating vibrations for certain conditions. On that note, I created a splendid vibrophile for this model, again based on the real vibration data I got from Mr. D's star cycle. Consider this a sponsor of sorts. You can support my channel by just buying one of these vibrophiles if you have a butt kicker, link in the description below, or by buying a butt kicker, which I highly recommend, and using my code will throw a little in the pot for the next helicopter vibration recording. But back to this 500 model. Summary, the important things. The fringe conditions. Huh? And overall, there's room for improvement, and in simulation there probably always will be, but in my opinion, definitely the best 500 out there, and overall one of the best helicopter models in general. I highly recommend it. I look forward to your comments and questions, and until next time, may the feeling of that rotor wash over you. Huh?
Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy.